we have Shockat Adam here with me, and I'm going to be asking him some questions around why I should be voting for him in the next general election. So let's just get right into it. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you?
Very well, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure, and jazakallah for this opportunity. Greatly appreciate it.
No problem. What I wanted to do is I'm going to jump right into it. Why should I trust you and vote for you?
There's two questions there. First is of trust and why should you vote? Trusting me is always a case of you look at what people have done. It's usually a good indication of what they're going to do in the future. So I am a boy from the city, grew up in North Abington and then in Highfields. So where we're sitting now used to be my playground, so to speak, and my trek to college for nearly every day for about 3 years. So I am local. I come from a family, parents who couldn't speak English, and was given the opportunities to do really well in life, more than I probably deserve, in fact, and I'm forever grateful for that. But I've always thought there are two types of people. One is you do well, which is absolutely great, and you remain there and you enjoy the fruits of your labor. And there's another type of person who will also try to bring everybody else up with them and support the community that brought them up with them. So I like to think I fall in the latter. And in the last 10 to 11 years, my passion has been to champion the community because we have so much talent. And when I say the community, I mean anybody who comes from what is traditionally called the low socioeconomic class, maybe doesn't look like the conventional individual, from ethnic minorities, Afro-Caribbeans, etc. And my real passion is tackling bigotry, hate and racism. And Islamophobia is something that I have been challenging over the last 10 years. So that would be at institution government levels. I've spoken in the House of Commons about this, education levels, when there's been cases of institutional racism and Islamophobia, and on the streets, people being verbally abused, sisters being attacked, hijabs being sold. And this I have done as a community champion, completely as a voluntary basis. And there's a track record that speaks for itself. So hopefully that is an indication for the future. Why you should vote for me is the second question. Look, traditionally, we as a community are so despondent with the political narrative, with the people that represent us, and it's completely understandable why. You could just look at the last 2 weeks and you would think that there is no way I'm going to vote for anybody. That is why people who do rule over us have such an opportunity to keep us where we are, not allow us to get above our station, so to speak, and just completely and utterly not listen to anything that we stand for. We have two mainstream parties. Obviously there's more, but there's two mainstream parties that have been in government for over 150 years, the Labour Party and the Tory Party. But if you look at them today, there is absolutely nothing to differentiate them. But fundamentally, if that couldn't really be a problem, fundamentally, they do not represent the voices for people like myself and people I believe like yourself and for people around the community.
Thank you for that. Considering you have no background in politics as such, not directly linking to parties, etc., how can you really be a voice even though, with everything that you've just said?
That's a great question. And I think it's the sheer fact I haven't been in politics is an advantage. Because let's have a look what those that have been in politics have done to our country. I think we're in trillions of pounds in debt. These are really clever people, right? They went to the top schools and yet they have put our country into the knees. We are morally bankrupt when we talk about allowing people to drown in the English Ocean, English Channel, and not go ahead and rescue them. We are lack of any foresight because we're so desperate to do things for today that we do not look for anything in the future. And that is because they are playing to populist view all around the world. When you've got somebody like me who has no political ambition in terms of progression, but only purpose is to serve the community. So my politics is my electorate, and they are my bosses.
Thank you. So you say this, but many of us feel it is lip service, and we've said that about many politicians. Why will you be different?
Going back to my preceding answer, it's because I am only answerable to the electorate. Look, as I said to you in the first question, I have been blessed. A boy from Highfields, done relatively well. I run a couple of successful businesses. I have a lovely family, immediate and extended in France. This is not something I would do for any title. The letters MP has never been an ambition. Maybe a footballer, maybe even James Bond, but not an MP. It's not something that I aspire to.
Yeah.
But because there is such a gap at the moment of lack of representation, that I really felt
Are you
that we
worried
needed to.
about going into politics and having that, say, if you are elected?
Yes, if the truth be told, there is a little bit worry on a certain level because it's a field. Funny you should say that, actually. Just today I was listening to a podcast that out of the politicians that we have in government at the moment, I think 26 are under special surveillance because of severe threat of life.
Right.
So on that level, you're obviously dead. Secondly, you go into a field which virtually everybody I've spoken to has said, "Ooh, politics, Shockat, it's a bit of a dirty game."
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be the change you want to see. And I'm a firm believer of the power of one. And everybody would have said that in the past, but you have to believe you can be that person because there's so many good people.
So that leads me nicely to the next question. Should we be worried if you are elected that you will change?
Look, I can't stop people from worrying, but what I can say to you is that I'm completely accountable to you. As I said before, I'm not accountable to any leader or any party. So if your worry can easily be manifested because I am a person of the people, I'm easily accessible, unlike lot of maybe elected representatives. And the beauty of democracy is you can always vote me out, and when it's one of your own, you probably do it much quicker as well.
Yeah, so you've actually kind of alluded to this already in one of your answers. But many of us know that the world of politics can be very controversial. And it's actually really putting yourself up for scrutiny, which we've already discussed a little bit. Can you take that pressure?
Look, when you are about to be hit by pain, say you've got something coming towards you, and you know you're going to be in a lot of pain, all you can do is prepare yourself. How your body responds is a separate issue. So prior to this, you're talking to an individual who was extremely private. I didn't even have a social media account due to personal preferences. And now I'm out there. I'm putting my head above the parapet. My body has responded in the way it has done, and I'm pretty certain that I've got everything I need to take it.
If the pressure gets too much and you feel that morally this is now putting you in a position where actually it doesn't stand with your values, and say if politics takes you in that direction, how would you handle that?
For me, the reason I am standing is to be that voice. And if I ever felt that I am contradicting my principles, then I will step back. Because as I've alluded to, as you said, political ambition is not something that I've ever aspired to. My aspiration is to make a change, and I will always make a change on my terms. I understand pragmatism, I understand compromise to a certain degree. That's how the world exists. But if it is completely contrary to my beliefs, and I believe moral beliefs, and if somebody was asked me to do that, I would not step that line.
That's good to know. And I think one of the things that we have within our community definitely is there's a lack of transparency when it comes to politics. We feel that our MPs are not really transparent in terms of how they represent us or where they represent us. In fact, sad to say this, our current MP, I don't think I've ever met him in person. And I'm actually quite politically active. But he's obviously mixing in, going to events and things that I'm not really part of or invited. How would you make sure that you are a voice for all communities and not just one?
Okay, so going back to what you said, there's two things, right? There's opaqueness, which is completely true. And I think what you see is politicians never answering the question. They will always skirt around it, they'll make the points. And the second point is accessibility. I am available to people because I am from the community. My upbringing and my journey in life, I've been very fortunate. I've grown up in a certain community. I've travelled in this country. I've lived in different cities, but I've lived internationally as well.
Right.
So I have had experience with virtually every single community that you can mention because of the work that I've done as professionally, the work that I do voluntarily, and the fact that I have travelled and lived, not just gone for a 2-week holiday abroad. I come from African origins. I live in Highfields. I've lived in the Caribbean. I've lived in suburbia, and I've lived in parts where I may have been the only brown person in the whole city at one stage. So I've got accessibility to all communities. And I don't feel I should just represent one community. I represent the whole of Leicester South. Because racism, bigotry doesn't only affect the community that's being targeted, it affects everybody. So that's why it's really important that I represent everybody of every colour, every faith, no faith, creed, sexuality, everybody.
So if I was from a different background, so you're Muslim, and we know that Islamophobia is rife at the moment, not just within newspapers or the world, but also politically as well, because some of the politicians have said some awful things in the last 5 to 10 years, to be honest, if not longer. How would you ensure that people don't feel that you're, and this is me playing into the sort of stereotype a little bit that we hear all the time, that if they thought you're just a Muslim trying to take over?
Yeah, well, that is the typical Islamophobic trope. And that is precisely why I'm standing. Because we have to show that we are the fabric of the society. We have as much right to be in the political process as anybody else. And anybody who channels that sort of argument are going to win if we do not step up. So one of the main reasons I'm standing is to show that why should my faith matter when I'm serving the community? Okay, I'm a Muslim, I'm proud Muslim, and I'm proud British as well. And I don't see any contradiction between the two.
Brilliant. So I'm going to move into voting and talking a little bit about voting. So there are many people who are disengaged with the politics of the city, but the whole political system, if I'm honest. They will say, who cares? It doesn't affect me. They don't do nothing for me. What's your thoughts around this?
Look, I understand where they come from. You know, if I was in a non-political arena, you would look at the politicians and the politics, and I would completely agree with that. But the issue is that there are people in the political classes that want you to feel that way. But just remember, the vote that you have yields so much power that it can shape the future. And you have that power. Every single individual that has that vote will just think, what difference can I make? You can make a difference. The power of one, as I've spoken about. I'm trying to make a change. You can make a change with that vote and use that vote for however you feel to make that change.
So some of our community, they'll say, and we've heard it, I'm sure you have as well, it's haram to vote. Now, we're not scholars, and I understand that. But what are your thoughts on this mindset?
Well, you know, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I'll say that first of all. But equally, I have heard from our scholars that it's for us to vote to make that change, because you can then make a betterment. Don't think about yourself. Your vote could make it better for another human being. Yeah. And in Islam, if you're not serving anybody, what is the purpose?
Yeah, that's true. Islam's not a passive religion. Yeah. It's meant to be an active religion, and we're meant to be doing things within the community. Do you feel that's a little bit lost in our community?
Look, there is the personal spiritual level and there's the wider community level. As an activist for the last 10 years, I'm pleased to say there are lots of good people who do good for the whole community. But I feel, I was giving a talk the other day, that we should be representative of so many more issues. You know, environmental issues, that's our issue. Homelessness, that's our issue. You know, we have to feed clothing people. Loneliness, you know, animal shelters. You know, the stories we have within our religion of people being diverted to Jannah just for a simple act of kindness to one animal. How many people work for the RSPCA? You know, so there's so many avenues. So to answer your question, we're doing okay, but we certainly could do a lot better.
Yeah, because a lot of the things that we see, I'll be honest, what we see I live in sort of this area, Highfields, we know that typically it's a working class, very working class area. There's a lot of poverty in the area as well. And it's the same in probably, say, a working class, what they typically see as Monso, which is probably predominantly white British. And they also have a lot of poverty. Actually, if you look at both the situations, they're quite parallel. But then we know that the media and politicians will play off each other to make them think the reason why you're in this situation is because of the community there that's getting more. If you vote for me, I'll stop that. What are your thoughts on how you can tackle that and make the community come together and understand that actually we're all in the same boat and we can work together to make a better Britain?
we definitely have much more in common than dividers. And what you have described is the typical politics of divide and rule. Okay, so those that are at the top level would probably own 99% of the wealth, resources, etc. And then they will give 1% to be shared out amongst those in the lower social. So if you're talking, your examples were Highfields and Ersmonsel. Therefore, there is a lot of resources, but they're just giving you a little bit of resources. And then what they do is, well, look, they've taken most of the resources. You don't have any because of them, not because I've kept the 99%. And that is what we need to do, is find ways to work together. We have so much more in common. Your challenges are the same as our challenges. You know, housing, cost of living, National Health Service. This is not because of the differences in colour, religion, or creed. This is because the financial distribution in this country is fundamentally so unfair. And then they play the divide and rule. And let's just look at the rhetoric between asylum seekers or what people like to call illegal immigrants and Brexit. All of these things were supposed to have solved our problems. Nothing's going to solve our problems. Until we have even distribution of wealth, that's going to be a fundamental issue. And then you play off communities, and it's very easy to do.
Thank you. So I'm going to take you back to voting. Why should someone vote for independent as opposed to someone from the Green Party, for example?
That's a really good question. Look, as an independent, I thought long and hard to go with a political party. But there's a moment in time where I speak to so many people, and you know the term that they use is that I'm politically orphaned.
Right.
Because there's nobody representing you. Okay? And when you go into a political party, and it was alluding to one of your first questions, you may be asked to compromise your principles because you have to be part of a bigger system. Now, there's a lot of advantage to being part of a team. But sometimes, just sometimes in life, you take a broader perspective. You look at any organization that has done incredibly well, they have all taken one step back to take that leap forward. So, as an independent, first of all I will be looking out for is Leicester. I'm not accountable to any MP, any leader, any party, any infrastructure, just the community. Okay? I will fight like hell, looking out for Leicester, let's say. Any pot of money, any opportunity, any threat, I'll be looking at that. Secondly, when I overturn one of the biggest political majorities in history, what do you think is going to happen? We're as a community, as a constituency, you're in a win-win situation. Because the main parties will think, what has happened here? We must go back to start listening to our community for this to happen, right? And politics, we don't know what will happen. They may come to me and say, look, why don't you join our party? But the beauty of that is then, I don't do it on their terms, I do it on our terms.
No. So the red tape is not there as much. So I've reached out to my audience on social media, and we've had a few questions. One of the questions is, why did Shockat and the Greens not consult to run together to properly challenge Jon Ashworth's seat rather than running the risk of neither gaining a majority vote?
That's a great question. Look, in an ideal world, there would be one candidate which everybody gets behind and then challenges the status quo. That would be an ideal. But we all know in life it's very difficult. Now, we have reached out, we have had in conversations, but there were some fundamental issues that really needed to be addressed. And as I go back to my previous question, your previous question, that there comes a time where you really have to make a stance on your principles, on your terms, representing nobody but the community, after which things can change. But yes, ideally, one candidate would have been the ideal scenario. It hasn't happened. My arms are still open to anybody to join and become a united force, and that would be the best way to address the issue.
Brilliant. So another thing that's been sent through is Jon Ashworth has won crazy majority for many years. Labour's been in power within Leicester City for many years. Is it realistic that we can overturn that majority and win the next general election?
Yes.
Simple answer.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We've got the numbers there. We've got the drive. The community have seen that for so long. I'm going to talk specifically here about the Muslim community are the largest bloc outside the teachers' union to vote for the Labour Party. In fact, there's a quote that, even if they put a donkey up, as a Labour candidate, they'll vote for the Labour for them because we're so historic. But for the first time ever, there has been a tangible expression of they don't actually represent what we want. And there's a youth element to it.
So what do we need to do?
We need to register to vote. We need to register to vote, and we need to come out and vote. And we need to come out and vote in our numbers. If the community gets together and the wider community gets together, because they too are fed up of the status quo, it's completely doable. With the numbers, we can achieve this.
Awesome. So I'm going to now take it back. So I'm going to leave the voting a little bit. I think if we're going to vote for you, we need to understand who you are a little bit more as well. So aside from the political and all the work that you've done, who is Shockat Adam?
Yeah, so as we say, I'm a lad that grew up in these streets, passionate about the city, passionate about the country. I'm a qualified optometrist, so I'm a healthcare professional. So that is why one of my main policies is healthcare. I run my own businesses and I'm a passionate Leicester City supporter.
Thank you. Would you say you're accessible? Some people may see you as being middle class now that you've got an education, you've got a business, you're an optometrist. Some people here, that's like, well, he's made it. Of course, why does it matter? He's going to do what he wants. And will you understand normal struggles?
Absolutely. I come from a very humble family, and I try every single day to instill that humility to my children. It's very difficult. But I was brought up by a very strong mother who would have instilled in me those qualities to the extent that will never leave me. I know exactly who I am, and I'm proud of who I am, and that will never, ever leave me.
So we've talked about this a little bit as well. The Muslim community is heavily vilified at the moment, and many young people feel a bit let down by the elders. They feel many mosques are silent, and they don't want to represent us. What are your thoughts on this?
Look, first and foremost, the mosques, the madrasas, our religious institutions are doing a phenomenal job in terms of spirituality, which is much needed in this day and age. But a lot of their institutions, not all of them, but a lot of the institutions' speciality is in that field. So hence, due to lack of maybe confidence, or maybe lack of experience, or maybe lack of awareness, they haven't reached out to those that are not attending those mosques. So there's challenges to this. I've always said we sit on the shoulders of giants, but the challenges that our forefathers face is very different to what challenges of my children are facing, what our youth are facing, and young people are facing. Yeah. Drugs, social media, etc., etc. These things have to be tackled by our institutions, and if not, then we will leave a vacuum for our children to go elsewhere. Have they done great work? Institutions have done phenomenal work. Can they do more? I'm pretty sure they say they should be able to do more.
Thank you. So what do you feel impacts Leicester South the most?
I think there's quite a few issues here. I think one, if we take it fundamentally back to the city, this city has been celebrated as the multicultural city of not just this country, but it was a spotlight for the world. There's been a lot of issues now because there's new minorities that have become majorities, lots of different communities coming together. And it's been, I don't think in time, in this country at least, there's been so many different groups of people. This is not being addressed in a proactive and a positive way, not in a negative way, until something goes wrong, and then it's victim, and then it's blaming. So that is one of my fundamental things.
So that's interesting, because my next question is sort of related to that. I feel, it's my personal opinion, that Leicester has been scapegoated quite a lot recently with, we're talking COVID, we were kept in a longer lockdown compared to actually all the cities in the UK. We've had big parts of the community clashing with each other, so the Muslim and Hindu community, which was then put down as a cricket thing with India and Pakistan, but then we found out that there was a lot more going on in that situation. We're an ethnic majority city, which is very different to some of the other cities now as well, according to our latest census statistics. How are you going to protect that reputation? Because it feels that our reputation, especially during COVID, for example, there was a woman from if my memory serves me right, on Green Lane Road with a headscarf, and that image was plastered across all mainstream media. There was this shot of Spinney Hill Park where the lads were playing cricket, I believe a day before lockdown. But again, that was used to show that there's minorities within the city who are not following the rules. And it was almost alluding to the fact that ethnic majority cities will not work because they just don't follow the rules. What are your thoughts on Leicester being portrayed that way, and what are you going to do to change that?
It fits in very convenient to the narrative that what you've described. So there was lots of images that were being sent to me of Asians, people in headscarves during COVID time, and so there was this subliminal message. And these, I'm talking about Financial Times, I'm talking about the Times newspaper, the Telegraph, reputable newspapers. Apparently it's all to do with logarithms. I don't understand all that stuff. But I think there was definitely a premeditated attempt to portray ethnic minorities as the root cause of this problem. Okay? And it was a huge challenge during COVID, and we were in lockdown for much longer. Politics was being played there because we've got a Labour council and a Tory government, and they were being punished, I suspect, for some of those reasons. Multiculturalism instead, when it comes out of the mouth of somebody like Suella Braverman, who is an Asian from East African origin, who has served under a brown prime minister and a black chancellor of exchequer, it's just crazy. How can multiculturalism be dead? Multiculturalism is what makes Britain great at the moment. Now, for going back to your real fundamental question, what I think we've forgotten in this city is the art of honest conversation. Look, a friend can make a mistake. That doesn't mean that person stops becoming your friend, and that doesn't mean that mistake is no longer a mistake. You can be both at the same time. So, with the issues that are facing the city, nobody is having honest conversation, not to finger point. That doesn't achieve anything, but to build bridges.
So that's a good question. So what has happened since? So, for example, the Muslim and Hindu situation that is nearly been it's coming up to 3 years now, I'd say. 2 years. So we've not heard anything since then. What has because I feel personally it's still simmering, and it could blow up again at any point. Yeah. What can the community be doing better? Because if you're going to represent us, I assume you'll be part of these conversations. What could we do to build those bridges or stop that happening and blowing up?
Look, I'm in a very unique position to address that, because I really do think that honest conversations need to happen. We don't kick this down the road. We get all the communities together, okay? And as I say, not to finger point, but to build bridges. What's happened up to this point is absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
so what
nothing.
we'll have an event. We'll share some food, we'll take some photographs with due respect, but the difficult conversations haven't happened. And then we're kicking the can down the road for our children to pick up. It's more than simmering.
But exactly what you've just said. So you're kicking the can down the road for the children to pick up. Now, the young people were really het up in that situation. You saw a lot of the young people turn up who actually feel really disenfranchised with the whole, like I said earlier, the adults in the community. How do you make them part of these building bridges conversations without them feeling, well, I don't want to speak to them. They did this to me and they did that to me. How do you bring them along with the journey?
You bring them on the journey because those are the people that are being affected. So as you said to me, they might see me as as somebody a bit from a different structure.
Yeah.
That's why it's important to get people from every community, led by elders, to bring the young people together, to get the women together, the sisters together, the young boys together. There's so many avenues. When I was growing up, we were all together. Now there seems to be a ghettoization, which has been again done by the political classes to divide us. We again have so much in common. We bring the youth together, have serious conversations, and we address every single issue, whether it's from the Muslim community perspective, or Hindu community, or Sikh community, whether it's international affairs that are playing a role in our city. What we can't do is say, oh, that's not happening, that's got nothing to do with this, because that's ignorance, and ignorance will lead to real problems. So I need to make sure that everybody's on the same page, bring as many people together as possible, and that one thing that's not happened is honest conversations. To build bridges, not to point fingers that it was your fault or my fault. How can we do better?
And not playing into the hands of the politics, the media, and actually having an honest conversation within community.
We were let down by community leaders. We were let down by our politicians. We were let down by the police forces. And we let ourselves down. And everybody's to blame for this. There were so many
and we've still not tackled
pressure points before then that if they had addressed them, it wouldn't have exploded. And as you just said, if we don't address it again, it's going to explode. Not talking about it is going to be the biggest thing, but there's nobody brave enough to take that on.
Are you brave enough?
I'm absolutely brave enough. And that is one of the fears, again, having lived in this city, knowing every community virtually, intimately, I can definitely play a huge role in that.
Thank you.
And not scared of having honest conversations.
Thank you. That was a powerful answer. Thank you. Are you worried that you're at risk of alienating the non-Muslim constituents? Are you for them too?
Absolutely. Look, this is a political campaign and a crusade, so to speak, to represent every single person. So I'm passionate about healthcare. You know, I'm an optometrist. I know what the healthcare is doing. I have patients who have lost their sight because of the inadequacy of the system, not because of the system, but because of lack of funding, the resources that are just not there, not
insane.
motivating our workers, etc. Cost of living, that impacts everybody. It doesn't matter what colour you are. Everybody's got the same things. I've got policies on the cost of living. Housing, 5 to 6 years waiting time. Article 21 that was supposed to be repealed is still there after all the promises that Michael, that affects everybody. Education, youth, environment. You know, I represent all of those issues, and I genuinely mean it. These things really mean a lot to me, and we have a whole policy team. It doesn't matter black, white, yellow, green, it's for everybody, and we all have to get together to make this world a better place.
So, I mean, there's so many things that we can talk about at the moment, but I'm gonna now kind of look to the future a little bit. So, say if we can work together, we can achieve this. What's the succession planning to you? Because you're not going to be in politics forever. So, if you decide to step down, what happens next? Do we just go back to Labour?
No. One of my main I've got 3 ambitions for this, and one of the main ones is to create a template and a blueprint to motivate people that were like me to come on board and take it to the next level. We have so much talent in this city. I would love to run some kind of training program, or even if it's a small form of inspiration, that look, if this kid from Highfields can do it, I can do it. And that should be if they're from Esmonsal or from any other ward. Why should we rely on somebody from out of our city to come and reside over us, so to speak? So really, one of my main reasons for doing this is precisely what you said. I would like to leave and create capacity. One of the things that our community is not very good at is creating capacity. That's why you see one person in charge, and that's it. 10 years down the line, because we do not create that capacity building. I'm passionate about creating capacity, and not because there's so much talent out there. There's so much talent out there, and you just motivate them, they'll do it a million times better.
Awesome. So, last few bits for me. I have a request. We seem to find that Jon Ashworth is proving to be quite elusive. When you next meet him, will you ask him something for us?
I'll try my best.
Why he didn't vote for ceasefire, and why he has been hiding in the sidelines using semantics to fool us.
So that is a question that I've already asked him before I decided to stand as an MP. So I went to speak to him along with quite a few other individuals, and that was the fundamental question. As Jon, we don't want you to say anything controversial. There was 2 requests. One was to call for an immediate ceasefire with no semantics, with no playing with words. Immediate ceasefire and accessibility to aid, because by that stage, when I spoke to him, unfortunately, 5,000 people had already been killed. So he didn't answer it then. I will continue asking him throughout the whole campaign.
I've got another question actually off the back of that. I've heard rumours that Jon Ashworth was going around saying, well, I'm not worried about the Muslim vote because they're going to vote for me regardless, so I don't care what they think, I'm going to do what I want to do. What's your thoughts on that?
Look, there's 2 things. There's either what people have heard, and there's actions. And actions speak much louder than words to me. So I personally haven't heard those words myself, but I have been told that by a couple of people. But whether he said it or not, the actions prove that point, because he knows that a sizable part of his community, and it should be majority of the community, because 70% of people in the country, or more than 70, want an immediate ceasefire. Okay, so the fact he didn't vote for a ceasefire, you are judged by your actions, means he doesn't care about the people he serves and the Muslim community and those that, not just Muslim humanity, rights, he's not been represented.
Yeah. Well, he's not been present at most things. So he called for ceasefire. He wasn't present at the Leicester March, which I would have expected to
Well,
see him
not
if
just
that's
that,
what he
he's
stood
not been
for.
there with the NHS staff that were protesting. He wasn't there with any single march because the order has come from top, and that goes back. I'm not going to be accountable to that.
Yeah, and I guess if you, this is my opinion, but if you decide to be a career politician, then it's not about the constituents. It's about what you do and how you hold your position.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking after, you're building cabinets basically. I'll be building communities.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to do a quick fire round. I'm going to say one word.
Yeah.
You've got one word to answer me
Okay.
back on. They're not hard. Leicester,
City.
Gaza,
Tragedy.
NHS,
Have to save it.
policing,
Inadequate.
knife crime,
Challenging.
Conservatives,
I feel unwell.
international law,
Has to be protected.
Labour,
Let down.
Jon Ashworth.
Has to go.
Thank you.